Admiral Zethkar stared at the blue marble suspended in the void before his fleet. Earth, the third planet of an unremarkable star system that had somehow produced the most troublesome species the Galactic Confederation had ever encountered. "Status report," he commanded, his forearms folded behind his carapace as he observed the tactical display. "Blockade is holding, Admiral," replied his communications officer. 300 vessels in perfect formation. No human ship has left or entered their atmosphere in 72 standard hours. Zethkar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The humans had been expanding too rapidly, their crude vessels somehow outmaneuvering ships with technology centuries more advanced. Their aggression was legendary. They fought wars over resources, territory, even abstract concepts called ideologies. When the Confederation had politely requested they halt their expansion into disputed sectors, the humans had responded by declaring something called manifest destiny and accelerating their colonization efforts. A blockade seemed the perfect solution. Humans were notorious for their fragility. They required constant supplies of food, water, and atmosphere. Cut off from their growing network of colonies, Earth would capitulate within weeks. It was elegant. It was civilized. It was exactly what every other species would do when faced with overwhelming force. "Sir?" The communications officer's voice carried an odd tremor. "We're detecting movement from the planet's surface." "More supply ships attempting to break through?" Zethkar asked dismissively. They had already turned back dozens of vessels trying to reach Earth with supplies. "No, sir. These are different, small craft, hundreds of them." The main screen shifted to show a swarm of tiny vessels rising from Earth's atmosphere. They were crude by Confederation standards, metal shells with chemical propulsion systems that belched primitive exhaust. Compared to the sleek antimatter drives of the blockade fleet, they looked like toys. "Analysis," Zethkar demanded. "Single pilot craft, minimal life support, no apparent weapon systems. They're civilian vessels, sir. Converted industrial shuttles, personal transport craft, even what appears to be recreational spacecraft." Zethkar's translator struggled with the next transmission from Earth. The message was being broadcast on all frequencies, apparently from something called the International Space Coalition. "Attention, alien fleet. You have blockaded our world and cut us off from our people among the stars. You believe this will force our surrender. You are mistaken. You have apparently never studied human history. When we are cornered, when our survival is threatened, when our families are cut off from us, we don't surrender. We adapt, we improvise. We overcome. You want to see what humans do when you trap them? Watch." The swarm of small craft began moving toward the blockade fleet. As they approached, Zethkar realized with growing unease that these weren't random civilian evacuees. They were flying in formation, with a precision that spoke of military training. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from those craft," the sensor operator reported, his voice rising in pitch. They've somehow weaponized them." The truth hit Zethkar like a plasma bolt to the thorax. These weren't civilians fleeing. They were volunteers, ordinary humans who had converted their personal vehicles into weapons. Industrial shuttles now carried improvised nuclear devices. Recreational spacecraft had been fitted with mining explosives. Even the smallest personal transports were loaded with whatever destructive materials their owners could acquire. "How many?" he whispered. "Current count is approaching 2,000 craft, sir. And more are launching every minute." The next transmission from Earth was different. Younger voices, older voices. Voices speaking in dozens of different human languages, but all carrying the same message. "You wanted to see what cornered humans do? We'll show you." As the swarm approached, Zethkar finally understood the fundamental error in the Confederation's assessment. Every other species, when faced with superior force, would seek to minimize casualties and negotiate. They thought in terms of acceptable losses and strategic withdrawals. Humans thought in terms of unacceptable outcomes. The first wave of converted civilian craft struck the outer perimeter of the blockade. They didn't attempt to engage in traditional combat. They simply rammed into the Confederation vessels at maximum velocity, detonating whatever explosive materials they carried. Each impact was suicide, and each impact was devastating. "Sir, the Nexus Wing reports hull breaches across 7 vessels. They're not trying to win a conventional engagement, I know what they're doing," Zethkar said quietly. He had studied the human military doctrine called kamikaze, but he had assumed it was an aberration, a desperate tactic used only by their military caste in extreme circumstances. He had never imagined an entire civilian population voluntarily transforming themselves into weapons. Wave after wave of converted civilian craft crashed into the blockade fleet, cargo haulers carrying fusion reactors, personal yachts loaded with antimatter stolen from research facilities. Even atmospheric shuttles piloted by humans who couldn't normally survive in space, sealed inside crude environmental suits for what they knew would be one-way trips. The communications channels filled with final messages from the attacking craft, messages to families, declarations of defiance, even what the translation software labeled as jokes about taking alien invaders with them. "Admiral, we've lost 47 vessels," his tactical officer reported. "At this rate, I know." Zethkar watched another group of human craft approach his flagship. The lead vessel was broadcasting music, something called Born in the USA. The pilot, a female human according to sensors, was singing along as she guided her converted mining shuttle toward the ship's primary reactor housing. "Admiral, perhaps we should—" "Begin withdrawal," Zethkar commanded. "All ships begin immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance." "Sir?" The blockade is broken, Commander." "It was broken the moment we thought we could cage these creatures and expect them to behave rationally." As the fleet retreated, emergency transmissions flooded the command frequencies. Not distress calls from damaged ships, but reports from Confederation colonies throughout the sector. Human vessels were arriving, not the military craft they had expected, but converted civilian ships, cargo haulers, even passenger liners. Each one broadcasting the same message: "You touched our home. Now we're coming for yours." Later in his report to the Confederation Council, Admiral Zethkar would write, "The human concept of acceptable losses does not exist. When threatened, they do not calculate odds or consider strategic withdrawals. They calculate cost to the enemy and consider total victory. The blockade was not a siege. It was a declaration that their survival was threatened. We accidentally turned an entire species into weapons. The recommendation was unanimous: immediate ceasefire and full diplomatic recognition of human territorial claims." The humans, it turned out, had only one rule when cornered: everyone goes home or no one does. The Confederation learned to respect that rule the hard way.